Alright. I know that as you were reading the title of this video, it must have got you so angry that you started shaking your fists in anger at your screen. But hear me out. So recently, I was having an argument in a WhatsApp group, as one does. And I called the Avatar series overrated when someone decided to compare it to popular anime like Naruto or Dragon Ball. So after a lot of back and forth, I decided to rewatch the Avatar series, both Avatar series, that is Avatar The Last Airbender and Avatar The Legend of Korra. And I ended up being pleasantly surprised at how good both shows were, for kid shows. So something weird ended up happening, and when I finished the first series, I ended up with a lot of critiques for the show. I mean, it was good, it was excellent, like it's a really, really good show. But mostly what really ticked me off about the first series was how the writing was a bit off, and it was a bit childish for me. So I didn't really enjoy it as much as I did when I was watching it as a kid. But when it came to The Legend of Korra, what actually happened was that most of these issues I had with the writing were fixed in The Legend of Korra, which is something I found surprising and which was the motivation for me to create this video. So before you leave a dislike, before you get angry, let me explain why I think that The Legend of Korra is better than The Last Airbender. Catharsis. What is catharsis? So if you look anywhere online, catharsis is going to be explained as the ability to make someone who is viewing or experiencing a piece of art feel the emotions of the characters in, let's say, a piece of art. Could be fiction, could be a TV series, could be anything. Whenever there is art, a good writer has the ability to make the audience feel the emotions and really care about the characters on screen. So if you go earlier into the Avatar The Last Airbender series, for me at least, it was really, really hard to care about Aang and the struggles he was going through. Now I know that's crazy because it's Aang. Aang is awesome. True. But really, let's think about it. This guy had just lost his entire nation and 100 whole years of his life. Everybody he knew growing up was dead, basically. But it seemed like he was more concerned or really unconcerned with what has happened to him, and he was more concerned with doing a bunch of dumb stuff, going penguin sledding and all those things. Like that was most of it. It felt like he didn't really care, and that made it difficult for me to care about what he was going through. So acknowledged, Aang was just a dumb kid. He might have found it really difficult to process exactly what had happened to him. But I just feel like a little more emotional weight, a little more caring from Aang would have made the story much, much better. So for most of the series, I ended up caring more about side characters like Zuko, Katara, Sokka, Suki, Mei, Toph, Iroh. All of these side characters and their emotions, their struggles really touched me more than Aang, who was supposed to be the main character, and I really found that to be a huge problem. And another thing that really rubbed me the wrong way was the fact that Aang is literally a Mary Sue character. So if you talk about a Mary Sue character, mostly it's used to describe characters nowadays like Rey Palpatine or other female characters like Captain Marvel, who are far too overpowered for no reason. It looks like they can do no wrong. And unfortunately, despite the fact that Aang is not even a female character, he falls into this category for most of the series. Whenever Aang has a fight with anybody he can't win, we all know what's going to happen. His eyes will start glowing white, his tattoos will glow white, he'll enter the avatar state, and he would win. After a while, initially in the series, it was really, really cool to see Aang enter the avatar state. But then after a while, it gets old because it's like, so whenever Aang can't win, basically, he just enters the avatar state, and that's like a guaranteed W. No matter what happens, he's just going to win. And granted, his fight with Azula, that fight actually, let's say, that was my best arc in the whole of Avatar The Last Airbender, where Aang entered the Avatar state and then he almost got killed by Azula, and then that whole struggle of him realizing like what he had done wrong, how he almost let the world down. That whole arc was actually brilliant, and I wish the whole series had gone like that. And that is something which I felt the series really wasted in terms of potential. So to contrast all that with Avatar The Legend of Korra, if we are being honest, Avatar Korra was an absolute mess, like completely. So the series starts very misleading. It established very early that Korra was a natural talent. She was a bender. Even before the series started, she had mastered 3 elements and it was just left with air for her to master. But all of this was a total misdirection. It was a red herring, because very soon we realized that despite her natural fighting ability, Korra actually had no idea what she was even doing. Korra absolutely got beaten by Amon. She had her bending taken away, so much that Aang had to give it back to her somehow. And she got manipulated by Unalaq to open their spirit portals. She had Rava destroyed, which actually should have killed her, but okay. Her connection with the old avatars was completely destroyed, and she almost got killed fighting Zahir. And she handled the Kuvira situation so badly. So in all 4 seasons of Avatar The Legend of Korra, she was making mistake after mistake, losing fight after fight. And the sad part about this is that most people use this to critique Korra and call her the worst avatar of all time, because it looks like she did lose every fight or every major fight in which she was in. But to me, it's actually the opposite. To me, Korra felt like the most human avatar and the most relatable avatar. Her struggles really felt real to me. Her pain, it felt earned. Her emotions were visible, very difficult to watch. And it made her journey from where she was at the start, very hard-headed, very cocky, very pompous, to the end where the series really humbled her. And I think at the end, she really realized that she had so much to learn. And that is something which was really intriguing and fascinating to watch for me. So for me, I truly cared about Korra, and I saw myself in her a bit. But in Aang, I did enjoy watching his journey from afar, but I was never able to put myself in his shoes or feel his pain. And that is why I feel the series really fell short. Because when it comes to a series in general, Catharsis, getting your audience to feel connected to your main character is arguably the most important thing that a writer has to accomplish. Highlight how much of an issue this is. Before I researched this, I was 100% convinced that The Legend of Korra had way more episodes than Avatar The Last Airbender. But imagine my surprise when I learned that The Legend of Korra actually finished with 52 episodes, while The Last Airbender finished with 61 episodes. That's crazy, right? So while watching the original series, I often found myself thinking, if this storyline I'm watching had just been stretched out a little bit, or this character's backstory had been fleshed out just a little bit, this whole story would feel much better, like much more developed. So personally, I feel like The Last Airbender tried to do too many things in 61 episodes and kind of ended up getting lost in all the different storylines, the different side quests and all the things they were doing. However, The Legend of Korra kept everything super streamlined. It was very focused, and as a result, everything at the end of the series felt fully fleshed out, fully developed, despite the fact that it had 9 less episodes to work with than Avatar The Last Airbender. So what I found enjoyable is the fact that The Legend of Korra is where we got most of the history and the lore about the Avatar universe. It was in this series that we learned more about energy bending, we learned about how the Avatar even came into existence, we learned about Avatar 1, we learned about Rava, what the Avatar state actually is, how the Avatar was able to bend multiple elements, why the Avatar even needs Rava, the history of the lion turtles, the harmonic convergence, the spirit world, so many things about the series which were barely touched on in the original series. But however, if you think back to the original series of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I can think of so many filler episodes in the original series which really should have been replaced with either episodes to develop characters more or episodes which expanded on the lore of the universe. So if they had done this, the writing in Avatar: The Last Airbender would have been much tighter and would have fixed so many of the issues with the pacing. Because the fact that Avatar: The Last Airbender had 9 more episodes, but it feels like it covered not even half of what the Legend of Korra covered. Definitely, Avatar: The Last Airbender had a lot of pacing issues. The Legend of Korra fixed most of these pacing issues, and I have no issue with how the Legend of Korra was organized. So one of my biggest gripes about Avatar: The Last Airbender was I felt like the show was made for kids. Crazy, right? Okay, I know that the show was made for kids. It was made on Nickelodeon, which was a kids channel, and it was also in the mid-2000s where they couldn't take as many liberties with how much they could show and how dark they could make the show. But I do feel that this aspect really held the show back in many ways. In particular, there was one thing that really ticked me off. There was one episode, I'm sure you guys all remember this episode, where Jet, remember Jet, that freedom fighter guy who Katara had a crush on. So Jet supposedly died in this episode. They were fighting underground, the Daily headquarters or something. And I remember very carefully how the show tried so hard to obscure the fact that Jet had died right there. I mean, he got hit in the stomach. Literally, his stomach got penetrated by this rock or something. But they didn't show anything. He was actually alive at the point where everybody left, and it was so crazy. It felt so weird to me. So this was actually supposed to be a very heartfelt, a very touching moment. But because of how much they had watered down and censored this, it was so obscure that I actually had to Google after I finished watching the episode to make sure that, Jet had actually died right there. And apparently in some DVD extended cuts thing, they actually made a tribute to him or something. I mean, oh, come on. I know that it's a kid's show. Maybe they wanted to protect kids from the realities of life or whatever, but it was really a wasted moment. And that really ticked me off. And that's something which was littered so much throughout Avatar: The Last Airbender. I can think of so many moments where the show could have benefited from a bit more darkness, but unfortunately, the writers were hamstrung. They were not afforded this luxury by Nickelodeon, and it really held the show back from being a truly mature, a truly fleshed out series, unlike Avatar: The Legend of Korra. So speaking about The Legend of Korra, we can see clearly that the writers were afforded so much more liberty when it came to what they could show and how dark they could make the show. In fact, the show was so adult that they actually showed death on screen so many times, especially how Zahir literally murdered the Earth Queen by taking her breath out of her body. That was actually crazy. And they actually showed Zahir do the same thing to Korra, and she almost died on screen. And the fact that they actually went further than that in season 4, how it showed the depression she went through, the PTSD, the flashbacks, it went so dark. And the fact that even when she saw Zahir, she literally was having like PTSD flashbacks. It was so good. And I really liked how much the writers were afforded that liberty to flesh on these topics, and it really made Korra feel like a real person, an actual character, and I really like this. So to be fair, I want to be absolutely fair at this point. I'm sure that if the writers of The Last Airbender were given the chance to rewrite the show with all the freedoms and liberties which they had with Legend of Korra, I'm 100% sure that the show would be even more of a masterpiece than it was when they initially wrote it. But sadly, I don't think that's ever going to happen, so we are stuck with what we already have. So before I round things off, I need to give a huge disclaimer. I am not saying that Avatar: The Last Airbender is a bad show. Actually, it is quite the opposite. I think that Avatar: The Last Airbender is actually a masterpiece. If I were to give a rating for this show in general, I would give Avatar The Last Airbender a 9.2 out of 10. 9.2. The only difference is that I enjoyed watching The Legend of Korra a bit more. I'll probably give that one like a 9.5 or something. And it is the show which I am more likely to revisit in the future. So if you were to ask me, like a few years back, which of these two shows I preferred when I was growing up, 100% I would have said Avatar The Last Airbender. But now that I'm in my mid-20s, I fully appreciate shows that more accurately reflect the struggles of life and of responsibility and of family. And I truly feel that The Legend of Korra knocked all of these aspects right out of the park, while Avatar The Last Airbender sadly barely touched or fleshed any of those themes out at all. So we did get some news a few months ago that there will be a new Avatar series coming out in 2025, which is revolving around an Earthbender Avatar. That's the Avatar after Avatar Korra, and it's going to be set in the modern day. I can't wait to see how that is going to turn out. So given the fact that Avatar Studios is now fully on their own as an independent entity, and they are going to be developing this show for streaming, it's going to be purely towards maybe kids and also adults. This is going to be, I really expect them to do great things with this next Avatar series. While I want them to embrace the adult themes of The Legend of Korra, I also don't want them to lose the humor and the charm which made Avatar The Last Airbender so iconic. Well, whatever happens, we are definitely going to be there to cover it. Anyways, I am your everyday African nerd, and I'm off to watch some more stuff which I can make long videos on. So stay safe and goodbye.